Hello and welcome to Philosophy of Religion, Philosophy 1170 at Douglas College. We're an online course, for the time being at least, and that's what I'm assuming. I will be making video lectures, short video lectures, I hope for the most part, throughout the term, and they will become available on the course website. I introduced the course on the first day that we met. So today I want to get into things in this first lecture with the whole concept of religion. All right, so also on the first day we looked at some of your answers to the question, what is religion? And some of the answers to the question, what is philosophy? If you haven't done that yet, make sure you do it for credit. What I'm going to do here is move on to other definitions, maybe just a bunch of other opinions besides your own, but important thinkers, important ideas, different perspectives on what religion is. So our question is, what is religion? But my main goal is to try to open your mind, extend what you may think religion is to include a lot more, or at least to appreciate the breadth, the variety, the differences of religion. We can start with what some dictionaries say. And here I'm not just looking at ordinary dictionaries, but dictionaries that look into the origin of the meanings of words. Religio in Latin has the meaning of obligation or bond. And it's connected in this derivation from a different word that means to tie back or to tie tight, to fasten down, as it were. It gradually started to mean that tying, that bond between human beings and gods, and so connoted monastic life, where people became monks and devoted themselves to the life of God. So more broadly, religious practices, in the sense that we might take it today, you can see how it's an extension from the practices of monks, but that broader meaning, what is your religion, your religious practices in your life, that is only a few hundred years old. Just in the time when we have these religious wars, what is your religion? So here's a different dictionary, a slightly different meaning relating religio. Basically it says obligation and bond above, but here to piety. And a related word, religens, meaning fearing the gods or pious. So piety and pious is about a proper relationship to the gods, a right relationship to the gods, a fear of the gods. And the technical word for that, very important in our class, is awe. Awe, as in awesome. Awesome just means cool today. But awe is a very important meaning in the philosophy of religion. It means the fear of God. And it says in the Bible, the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. So how's that? So much for your friendly, smiling, cheerful God. Piety is a certain kind of a fear, and it really reflects the idea that a root meaning of the notion of God is the power, that there's some kind of power that overawes us and overwhelms us, and we're crazy not to feel this. That's the root meaning. Interestingly, in that meaning, you can oppose it to negligence, religions, negligence, or negligent. And legere there is taken as to gather or to select. And this is where there's some controversy. This is a slightly different derivation, to think that the root lig is, if it's related to this legere, it means to gather or to select. But if it's related to a slightly different word, it means to tie or to bind. So it's in this second definition that the famous Latin Roman philosopher Cicero derived the word religio. That is to gather and to select. So he took religio to mean to read again, to carefully to gather, to cull, and to pull together different meanings, to carefully consider the things related to the worship of gods in particular. So he almost defines it philosophically, to carefully consider this worship rather than just the worship itself, to reflect on our bond or our link to the world. So those are two dictionary definitions. I went ahead and looked it up in my little Castle's Latin dictionary and found to tie on or to fasten behind. So there's both religo, which means to tie on and to fasten behind, and religio, which is given two meanings depending on what it applies to. So it applies to the gods or anything divine. It can mean essentially sanctity or worship. What is worshipped? Be it a thing or a place, something that is holy. So here we find this is perhaps a later development of the Latin word, that religio means something like sanctity or holiness. That's the root meaning, or a root meaning, of the word religion. When it's applied to the gods, when it's applied to persons, it means conscientious exactness, a scrupulousness, a carefulness, religious scruples, or once again, awe. Or from a more critical point of view, call it superstition. One person's strict observance is another person's superstition. One person's awe is another person's folly. There's just one more point I want to make about one of the most literal meanings, that is to link back or to tie back, to fasten behind. This idea is to link us back to the gods. That's really what religion means, is to link us back to the gods. It also means the holiness or the sanctity of the gods and the attitude we require if we're going to have a right relationship with these. But as such, this linking back is actually very much related to the Sanskrit word yoga. Yoga means yoking. It's like a yoking, which is a linking. It's a binding of two oxen to control and to cultivate. And here, of course, the great field that you're plowing, Kurukshetra, the field of truth, is a field in your own mind. You are linking your mind back to God, having become separated somehow from God. And another related term, a yogic term, samadhi, which you may have heard, sam is union or one with, together, and adi is the Lord. So this is one with the Lord. Samadhi, though, in its regular meaning, means meditation. So this is the right relation. Meditation on the Lord, on the oneness of the Lord, your oneness with the Lord. So really, religion and yoga are, in a profound sense, synonymous. Religion means a kind of a discipline. We call it strict observance above. Yoga is a kind of discipline of the mind. That's the way I'd like you to think about it, rather than a set of doctrines or beliefs that someone's pushing down your throat. Notice that none of this mentions anything about doctrines or beliefs. How about that? The definition of religion, I've given you 4 of them here, or they're really kind of all closely connected. This definition mentions nothing about belief. Maybe practices. The word religion is also related to the word rely. So religion is a kind of reliance, or trust or faith, if you like. Those meanings are not far from the literal meaning of the word religion. All right, so let's go beyond dictionary definitions, because after all, dictionaries only tell you about the word. We're interested in the phenomena of that strict observance, that phenomena of the union with the Lord, that phenomena of linking back to God. Let's look at different accounts, and these, you'll see, come closer in some cases to what students said in their definitions. So this is the great philosopher Immanuel Kant, who's important in this class in a variety of reasons. He'll be mentioned in the textbooks a few times. Lutheran, Protestant philosopher. So he says religion is recognition of all our duties as divine commands. So that's an important idea. Now, for our purposes, this is a very narrow idea of what religion is. This equates religion with duty, ethical duty, moral responsibility. It reduces religion, or the contents of religion, to our ethical responsibilities. It's a little bit like saying the only way to get into heaven is by good works, by good deeds, by your proper actions, and by not sinning in your actions. If you do that, you're in. I just, by association, equated heaven, or the entry conditions for heaven, with ethical criteria. So this is what Kant is saying here. And for our purposes, it's a very narrow idea of what religion is. It may be the correct one, but to say that the religious teachings are exclusively about what we owe to each other, what we owe to God, about right and wrong, is natural. Many students mentioned in their definitions of what religion is something about teachings of right and wrong. So very proper that questions of right and wrong, ethical teachings, are part of religion. No question about that. Every religion has some ethical teachings. No religion goes without ethical teachings. But to reduce the religion to the ethics is a particular narrow perspective. And for Kant, it's connected with the relation of philosophy to religion, because philosophy includes this ethics business. All right, so that's one view, and an important part of religion, we can say, is ethics. We won't go so far as Kant by equating the two, but no one can deny that ethics is a vital part of religion, a vital function and gift and deliverance of religion. One of the main businesses of religion, certainly, is how we behave, what they can teach us about how we can behave. But that's not the whole of religions. So let's keep that in mind. So here we have not a philosopher, but early social anthropologist says that religion is a propitiation. So that's an appeasement or a pleasing or conciliation, or like a reconciliation of powers superior to man, which are believed to direct and control the course of nature and human life. So this, you see, is a very different metaphysical idea, that our gods are powers that direct human life and control nature, and sometimes in ways we don't like. And in order to get some influence on these great powers, we invent religion to try to please the gods, to propitiate them. We offer them things in exchange. So this is one very large component of religion. And it's interesting how different these first two components are. One says it's about right and wrong, and that's it. And the other one says it's kind of a primitive thing about we're scared of nature. There are these powers in there. We have this awe. And since we don't know what the hell's really going on, we invent some kind of rituals and pour some things on the fire or bow down and then hope that this power is going to do us a solid in turn. So that's kind of the way James Fraser is looking at religion. And there's no doubt that if you look back far enough into old religions and into the primitive minds, you can find something like that, or into our dream life. We're afraid, we have fears like this. But again, to reduce religion to this primitive fear of the world is an oversimplification. Even if there's something right here, even if we do have these fears, and we must do something to assuage these fears, it doesn't follow that that's the whole sum of what religion is. It's one perspective on religion. Maybe it speaks to something that you think is true about religion, but I'm just also saying, let's put that aside. There's an interesting connection between these two and an interesting opposition between these first two. Kant says religion is our ethical duties, and Fraser says religion is our fear of divine powers. So Kant says it's divine commands. Fraser says it's divine powers. And one of them, and Kant trusts that God's powers and commands are going to be telling us to do the right and the wrong. Fraser's looking at religion much more broadly, concerned with early religions, primitive religions, as he understands them. He's a lord, so he's looking down from the great heights of British civilization. and sees only rot and primitive savages around the world. So this is a very reductive view, and it's an old view of religion which is not very seriously taken anymore in any academic circles that I'm aware of. Now we come to a different philosopher, much more sympathetic to religion, not so much trying to push one religion for another, but interested in the general function of religion in society. So he wants this to apply not just to Christianity or European cultures. He's an American. He's thinking about the different cultures, the different world religions. So he says the religious is any activity pursued on behalf of an ideal end, against obstacles and in spite of threats of personal loss, because of its general and enduring value. So it's interesting how you can kind of fold Kant's view right into that. You can see how the general enduring value Kant could take to be our ethical duties. Our ethical duties are general enduring values. The obstacles and the threats is something of the fear found and recognized in Fraser's definition. But Dewey's definition is much more neutral. He's not like a lord doing social science, trying to say what's primitive and what's elevated. He's like a modern philosopher, empirical philosopher, doing social science, trying to figure out what religious activity is and to define it generally. So this gives it a wholesome function within society. Could be abused, could be problematic, but there's some use for it too. Now, apart from its role in society, there's another definition. This is a very religious philosopher, a very interesting definition here, lauded often for its neutrality, its philosophical neutrality. So religion, he says, is the state of being grasped by an ultimate concern. So religion is ultimate concern. Humans have concerns. Humans have ultimate concerns. Religion is just human beings dealing with the ultimate issues, the final, ultimate, big questions, we can say. This is a very interesting definition of religion. Who can be against religion if it's about ultimate concerns? And notice that he says religion is a state of being grasped. So he's defined religion as religiosity. He's defined religion as the individual's experience of being religious. And he says there's a few qualifications, a concern which qualifies all other concerns as preliminary and which itself contains the answer to the question of the meaning of life. So there's more, but this is really built into the idea of ultimate concern. So this is a very interesting definition. This is one that you might be able to accept from almost any religion. Can you think of a religion that would say, no, we're not interested in ultimate concerns, we're interested in local concerns exclusively, or something like that? That seems wrong. Maybe you can think of one, I hope so. And here's Huston Smith, famous author, philosopher, professor. He was a professor at MIT, where I was a graduate student for a long time, although I never met him there or didn't know him. This was before my time. He's very old, and he died just a few years ago at almost 100. He wrote a very well-regarded book, The Religions of the World. Wonderful book. I used it as a textbook once in class. And he says wherever people live, whenever they live, they find themselves with three inescapable problems: how to win food and shelter from the natural environment, how to get along with one another, and how to relate themselves to the grand scheme of things. Okay, so this is to say the problem of nature, a social problem, and a religious or spiritual or philosophical problem. This is also a very broad notion of what religion is. It includes the ultimate concerns. These three, you can say, are pretty ultimate concerns. The first two very worldly, and the second one tending to perhaps otherworldly. And he thinks the third one is less important, although I don't think very much of his argument here about why the third one is much more important. Why would the age of artifacts be a testament to their importance? A little bit too much confidence in archaeology for me. All right, here are a few more that get, like the Tillich one, into the felt essence of religion. And actually, I've talked about reducing religion to one idea and cautioned against it. And I mentioned how Tillich seems to exclusively focus on the religious experience or the personal aspect of religion. Many others have done so. Others have focused on the social aspect. But whatever way you want to look at it, the more general question in the background is, what is the essence of religion? Is there one thing that all religions have in common, whether it's recognition of ethical duty or fear of the powers of nature or ultimate concern or trying to get food, friends, or finality? Whatever it is there something that we can say all religions, any religions, necessarily possess? Is there an essence of religion? That's the fundamental question. The word essence is commonly used in everyday language, but when philosophers speak of it, they take it very seriously. If you have an essence of religion, then every religion will have this feature, whatever this essence. And anything that shares the essence will also be a religion. So it works both ways. Here's an early philosopher trying to define exactly that, when it was more fashionable in philosophy to try to define the essence of things. He says that the essence of religion consists in the feeling of absolute dependence. So this is a little bit like the fear of those powers. We are dependent on each other. We're dependent on the world. We need food to survive. We need air to survive. We're helpless creatures. The recognition of that and the necessity of our death makes us religious, strikes religion into us. The fear of God is the fear of death, and this fear of dependency that we require other things to survive, and without them we will not survive. So that's one idea. Again, it's a reductive idea in some way, that religion is this feeling of absolute dependency. You can call it a fear also. Religion is that which grows out of and gives expression to experience of the holy in its various aspects. And this is almost the same thing. We've seen the word religion linked to the sanctity, what is holy. And so holiness here is put as the very essence of religion, an experience of the holy. That's what religion is. See, it's much narrower than the idea of ultimate concerns, more specific, but it's clearly a key idea about what religion is. You find a similar idea in Durkheim, an important sociologist. Look at the second quote there. Religion is only the sentiment inspired by the group in its members. So there's a social element, but it's the emotion in the individual inspired by the group. But it's projected outside of the group that experiences them and objectified. Okay, so that is to say, this feeling of the holy, say, or the sacred, we objectify it, we think it as an object, we call it God, the holy object, the holy thing. But really, the holiness is the experience we have inside. So you see that the attempt to study religion comes with a view that says, oh, religion is either wholly an illusion, or you're more serious, you say, there is something that's holy, and religion is the right relationship to that. So you can have a realistic view of what you're studying in religion, or what's called a non-realistic view. That's in the next chapter. Non-realism. Very many philosophers and sociologists and psychologists will study religion, but they don't believe religion. They just look at it as some kind of external thing. These people, they behave in this way when they get religious. They're crazy how these people act. Well, they don't always say the crazy part, but often that is implied. They imply there isn't really a God. People just think there's a God. Now, there's a more realistic way of studying religion where you're not trying to say that they're wrong all the time, or you're not presuming that they're wrong. And there's a debate in the next chapter about what is the proper way to study religion. Can you study it from a neutral perspective? Or must you have belief in order to really understand what's going on? These outside philosophers come in, try to understand religion. If they don't believe, how can they penetrate and really understand? They'll just come up with some critical understanding that satisfies them. And you can see maybe this is what's happening sometimes. But philosophers also come up with a reductive understanding that satisfies them. Now, apart from all this, there's also William James's approach. He says the very fact that there are so many and so different from one another is enough to prove that the word religion cannot stand for any single principle or essence, but rather is a collective name. That there are so many different religions, so many different kinds of religious experiences, there's a wide variety of them. You can't say religion is one thing. There is no essence of religion. And to try to articulate one is a philosophical folly. So that may be wisdom.